Well, some would say, Sydney, UConn has already done back-to-back-to-back this year. Oh, you meant 3 straight national championships? I meant back-to-back-to-back losses in Maui, 3 straight days, and the world is collapsing around everyone in Storrs, Connecticut, and no one wears it more on their sleeve than Dan Hurley. So I posed the question to you last week, 2 weeks ago, about Rick Pitino. He was that guy who is gonna, shake your hand and tell you how good a game you had. And then he's going to go into the media and talk about how you screwed him over. Dan Hurley is going to put on Broadway level theatrics during a game. But then as that buzzer sounds, when he loses, he's going to pick his head up. He's going to shake your hand and say, good game. You said you would rather have Dan Hurley. Are we sticking with that?
I feel like I have to.
Good.
Stick with that.
That's a good answer. It's subjective, but I think it's a good answer.
I think I have to. I don't like what he had to say, though.
Yeah, so Dan. Come on, I am an emotional person. Anyone who has watched a game with me that I care about will know, and I know it's the same case for you, Sydney. People will think we're crazy, like legitimately crazy. And Dan Hurley, man, I think I said this last week, but like I almost don't know what he's going to do if he actually gets to the refs. Like people are holding him back. I'm like, is he going to maul these refs? Like he is nuts. And he has been open about mental health in the past and the battles that he's had with it. But this is an intensity thing. Like this is wild. And the Hurley family, of course, is familiar with this. His dad is probably the greatest high school basketball coach ever. And he was a total hard ass, man. Like absolutely old school and could really get on you, but ran a great program. Bobby Hurley, same thing. The battles with him and Leitner at Duke were crazy, but he ends up being stand-up guy, just like Bob, just like Dan. But the Hurleys don't often make excuses. And that's what Dan Hurley did earlier this week when talking about the dreaded Maui Invitational.
Maybe that I'm not doing another 3-game MTE again, and that moving forward we will only play home and homes and single game events in big time arenas. I don't think I'll ever do a 3-game MTE again, unless I'm not coaching here at some point somewhere else. There's zero chance I'll do that again.
Give me a break, Dan. Where did the Maui Invitational hurt you? Okay, other teams do it every year, and they have no problem. In fact, you do these November tournaments all the time. Everyone does, and you just won back-to-back national championships. And now, Sydney, it's like, well, we're not doing that again. Come on.
It's a little dramatic. Let's be
Shocker.
real. I think what really did it was the Dayton loss, because that was probably the worst out of all of them. But I just two emotional losses like that. I mean, it's kind of expected. You lose to Colorado and Memphis, then in overtime. Colorado was a 1-point loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just.
And he's calling out the officials after that and getting teed up. And it was an ugly scene. And there's not a lot of things you can say Maui ugly, but that was it. I mean, right there, that was not a good scene. In fact, I think I'm seeing some Baylor Twitter accounts with some great ideas. The Baylor coaching staff should wear leis or something to make them feel like they're back in Hawaii. But
I would pay to see Scott wear a lei.
I think that'd be great. Hawaiian shirt and everything.
That's what we should have done, Cam. You didn't get me prepared.
These are missed opportunities. That is a good call. We should. I think we've had so much turnover in great college basketball coaches the last couple of years with Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski and Jay Wright and Tony Bennett now recently at UVA is out, and so there's a mantle to be had for the biggest crybaby college basketball coach in America. I think Dan Hurley is running away with this.
That's very strong. I don't know if I agree with that.
You don't get to say Tom Izzo. That's too biased. You don't get to say it. I'm sorry.
That's really rude of you.
Who else would you put up there?
Oh, I don't even know.
See?
Okay, I guess you're making a case, but I
mean, you could go the Patino route. We talked about it last week. I mean, he's still going to do that stuff in the media.
Yes. I don't feel like we see this side of Dan very often, of him crying like
the complaining part afterwards.
Yes. So that's kind of why I just like defend it a little bit. But it's
give him the benefit of the doubt there.
A little bit. Yeah, I have to. I'm sorry.
All right,
but the point, and he knows this, and that's why he's played in tournaments like this before. You play these big games early on to prep you for March. Everybody knows that. Like you go into these environments, you play these tournaments, you want to play good opponents to test you for when the time comes in March. And sometimes you fail, and that's supposed to help you. You cannot go. Being undefeated in basketball hardly ever happens. Like you play too many games. Like there's always going to be room for error. Like it's not realistic to go on a run like that and be perfect every single time. But when things don't go your way, you have to figure it out. You are the head coach for a reason. If you're losing these close games, if you're losing in overtime, if you're getting kind of spanked by a Dayton team, that's some self-evaluation you got to do.
Could you imagine if this guy was coaching the Lakers right now?
No.
That was very close to happening.
It was very, very close.
Yeah.
And he wanted to stay for another natty, and we can see how things are looking.
And, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see about it. I think they got a strong team, but that was a bad week, man.
Super.
And you know what? Scott Drew did not say we're not doing road games again. We're not doing road neutral site games again. He didn't say, after getting blown out by Tennessee, he didn't say we're not doing these tournaments again.
No.
Sometimes it does, like you said, it doesn't go your way, man. It doesn't work. This is going to be an interesting one tonight. Baylor's not played in a week. They go up to Gamble Pavilion in Storrs, Connecticut. Awesome place to watch college basketball. And they face the two-time defending national champs who already did get the get-right game against Maryland Eastern Shore. So does that mean they're not as pissed off? Does that help Baylor that they had a game in between?
No, I think UConn's coming in pissed.
Well, I think what will help Baylor is that Alex Karaban is not playing in this game.
That will help them for sure. But I think I worry a little bit about Baylor just being off. But I hope it's a good game, and I think it will be.
I hope it is.
But I think UConn's going to be really mad.
Probably, yeah. And
I cannot imagine what practice was like for them this last.
And this is the good thing about Dan Hurley, and he used it a lot last year, and it was kind of like, what are you talking about? And that is the innate ability to make your team believe that everyone's doubting them at all times. And I'm not knocking that. That's a great trait to have. But now they are knocking him and knocking them and saying they're not going to three-peat. And saying they shouldn't even be ranked like that, and that's reasonable, by the way. That is legit doubting right there. And so he'll get to use that for this game. And Karaban not being in there is big. I mean, that's 16 points a game, 47% from three. I know it's early, but still that's pretty gross. That's someone it sounded like a lot of the UConn members of the media thought was going to be back. Definitely Mark Zanetto of Locked On UConn, who I really like listening to because he's a great college basketball guy. He thinks that was going to be the case, that Karaban was going to play. Looking at this from the Baylor standpoint, I think this is almost like a reputation type of game. And what I mean by that is if you win this game, it's like, oh, shoot, man, here's Baylor. This Baylor's back like this. And you'll see all the graphics about how consistently good they've been the last 5-6 years and how only Kansas has more wins in that span and yada, yada, yada. You're going to see a bunch of that, and they'll deserve that because that would be a big time win. If they lose, it will be one of those where it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do? They lost against the two-time defending national champions on their home court. And most of us Baylor fans will be like, yeah, but if we're going to be a Final Four team, you got to start winning some of these games. And you didn't win against Gonzaga. You had to have a major comeback to beat St. John's, but you did win. Although Mark Zanetto, I'm going to go back to Mark. He did not count that as a win for Baylor. I thought that was interesting. Tennessee, they got boat race too. So at some point, you need to have some balls, man. You got to make this at least a game, right? And at some point, you got to win. I know it's a tough task, but they just lost 3 in a row last week. It's not like they can't be beaten. In fact, they're 0-1 against the Big 12. Shout out Colorado. Great. Just adding another good team to this conference. And West Virginia beating Gonzaga. Great. More good teams in this conference. But to me, this is reputational in terms of if they lose, they'll get overlooked. And maybe they should. Maybe they shouldn't be considered, a team that can go and win the Big 12. They get blown out in this game. I don't think you can consider them that. But if they win, Sydney, then it becomes, ooh, wow, Baylor's back. And Iowa State showed some weaknesses in that Auburn game. And, Houston's lost 3. And you know what? I think this Baylor team can hang with Kansas. All of a sudden, you're up there being touted as a team that could win the conference championship. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're totally wrong, but I do disagree with you a little bit because is this UConn team really the team that can go back and do it again?
Reputationally, Sydney. That was the word. Reputationally.
It doesn't look like it. Like, I don't know if this is even a UConn team that makes it past the Sweet 16. Really? So does this really mean everything to Baylor? We won't know that answer for a couple weeks, seeing how UConn season just continues to go. But I do think just the title and the reputation of what you're saying, it sounds good beating UConn.
Yeah.
It always sounds good.
That's going to look good in a couple of months.
Yes.
Where no one's going to remember that they lost 3 straight games the week before. You're going to say, oh, wow, they beat UConn at UConn? Like, that's big. So that part I think is true. I am wondering how Scott Drew approaches this week, right? A week in between games with, obviously Thanksgiving in there. So that's a little difficult. But we talked about what Dan Hurley would say, be, running his guys ragged, talking about how everyone is doubting them. And I think Scott could be doing the same thing where he could be saying like, nobody thinks you can beat a ranked team. Nobody thinks you can win this conference. And you're going to go up there. Nobody's going to give you a shot. We're not going to have any fans in the stands. My dad can't make this one, unfortunately. He did for the women at UConn a couple of times. But you can use that. I don't know if it's in Scott's nature, which is fine, but I think he could be using that too.
I think if there's anything he can use, it's the feeling they had leaving Gonzaga.
Yeah.
That's
what it's going to be like.
This is like the best like matchup to compare it to. Mm-hmm. So I think you take lessons from that game and you apply it. That's what I think Scott's doing this week is looking back at that, watch it again. Watch what happened, how we reacted. Now we get the chance to respond in the way that we want to. Mm. I think if I was Scott, that's what I think he's doing actually. I don't think I know him that well, but I feel like I know him good enough to think that's how he's going about it.
I hope he is. You going to pick a winner in this one?
I don't know. It's so tough. I've gone back and forth. I've thought about it a lot. But you know what? I've brought some success to Baylor while I've been here, so I'm going to give them the win on the road.
I'm going to do it too. It's not just because I host the show. I think this is a moment that is going to beg for that senior leadership. I think not having Caravan on the other side is a big loss. And if Jaden Nunn has a good shooting game, which he's been Jekyll and Hyde, but I think he's going to be one of the, if not the best 3-point shooter on this team. I think that's going to go a long way. So I think the Bears could smash and grab this one.
I think they could too. I think I just don't think this UConn team is what we think it is. So I think Baylor can do it.
Thank you for making it to the end of the video. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network part of your daily routine. We have got you covered with the most Baylor Bears athletics coverage of any outlet that's not directly tied into Baylor University. So if you want more of that, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and sick 'em.